Do I support the right of communists to speak freely and spread their nonsense propaganda? I hate to dodge the question, but it doesn't really matter what my answer is. Because communists themselves don't support their own freedom of speech. This isn't just some Antifa are the real fascist meme. What I mean is that real freedom of speech is about the competition of ideas in an open, intellectual marketplace. The kind of speech which threatens no one, like banal talk about the weather or what you had for dinner last night, which sadly comprises about 96% of our conversation. No one has to fight for that speech. No one has to fight for grandma's right to call her grandson and wish him a happy birthday on the phone, unless maybe it's the Nazi grandma in Germany. But the kind of speech which is controversial indicates a competition of ideas, competition over what is true, what is moral. Communists inherently hate competition. So freedom of speech doesn't apply to them, not because their ideas are so harmful, which, by the way, they are, but because they don't want it. If I were to try to psychoanalyze them, I would say they don't really care which ideas win as long as they're ruled by an iron fist. So, freedom of speech is an agreement. If I could impart one piece of philosophy to Western, white, heterosexual men, mainly, it would be don't impose higher standards on yourself than those who want you to impose those standards themselves hold. In other words, don't pretend that you're going into some valiant duel when you know your opponent is notoriously underhanded in combat. The fact is, free speech hasn't been fair for decades. And the first damning piece of evidence is the public school system. Students are indoctrinated from a young age into leftist ideology. They certainly aren't taught logic, reasoning, critical thinking. So if you talk about the virtues of freedom of speech without commenting on the pathetic excuse for education that we have today, then I think you're putting the cart before the horse. I know talking about being forced to subsidized youth indoctrination just isn't as sexy as, say, the Battle of Berkeley, which, by the way, is I will have more to say on later. But it's vitally important. Communists don't want real freedom of speech, because if they had real freedom of speech, then they'd actually have to get better at speaking, at convincing people. And frankly, that's not their wheelhouse. They're more at home shutting down right-wing speakers by any means necessary. Any means, that is, except civil debate and winning the argument. I've heard from many right-wing figures who say they would love to debate anarcho-communists or Antifa, but they simply can't find anyone who's willing to do it. At the moment, free speech translates to letting the right talk. The right has been fighting hate speech laws, bad schools, dishonest media, demographic replacement, and anti-white, anti-male programming for the longest time, and we are only just now starting to turn that tide. Now, if you want to say, well, the pendulum could swing the other way, and at some point, the communist speech could be the one that's being suppressed. Well, I disagree. Communism is a mind virus, and viruses adapt to their surroundings. In a alt-right world or a right-centric world, someone who's infected with the virus might very well look like they want to engage in a fair battle, but I assure you, fundamentally, the virus is still the same. It just pushes less because it knows it can't get away with it. You don't try to negotiate with a virus. You try to quarantine it and remove it from society so that its hosts don't suffer from a far worse fate. So the next time we beat back the left, I hope that our memories of who they are and what they're capable of don't escape us. Freedom of speech as a universal principle is a fail-safe trigger designed to prevent us from ever accomplishing that. And at the risk of sounding like a heretic to all of those I consider my allies, maybe we don't need it.